The World of Tanks development team continued improving our project throughout 2013. These improvements touched on many different aspects of the game. Now it's time to shed some light on the details of the progress we're making. In this video, we will tell you about how the game physics is about to change.
Sigmund Freud, the founding father of psychoanalysis, considered the passion for destruction a normal feature of the human psyche. We also understand this passion. That's why we've decided to bring the in-game destruction system to a new level.
We've been experimenting with this system for more than a year. All destructible buildings have been remade. Now buildings don't simply change from one condition to another. They do it in a beautiful way. Wooden houses break into logs. Frail huts fall into pieces. Brick walls crack along the brickwork joints.
When a building is destroyed, you may see an entire wall topple, hit the ground, and smash itself into smaller fragments. These fragments can also interact with vehicles and be destroyed as well. We tried different detail levels of destruction of brick buildings, big fragments, small fragments, a combination of big and small fragments. We even created a model of a building that literally breaks apart into single bricks.
The way a building can be destroyed depends not only on the type of material it is built of, but also on the type of shell that hits it. An armor-piercing shell will just pierce a hole in the wall, while the blast of a high-explosive shell will scatter pieces in all directions.
Buildings can be complex, for example, two-story. You can fire at the first story and it will be destroyed. Then the second story will also collapse. Some in-game objects cannot be destroyed due to gameplay requirements. They must exist. However, they also have some elements that can be destructed. You can shoot off a balcony or break glass.
All this became possible due to the introduction of the Havoc physics engine. This software is used in the gaming and film industries to create special effects. Of course, Havoc will not only be used for the building destruction system.
We decided to go further and provide vehicles with physically correct behavior. Now, all elements of tanks, including side panels, antennas, and chains, naturally rock and dangle when vehicles are moving. They can be lost during combat action, for example, when tanks collide. They can also be shot off by enemies.
The most significant changes will be to vehicle suspensions. Now, wheels will roll over uneven terrain in a natural way.
The T-26 was probably the most difficult tank to remake. It has a double suspension that consists of several suspension arms, so its behavior is quite complex. However, we were successful.
But despite the movability and accuracy of the new suspension, something in its behavior seemed to still be wrong. The problem was the tracks.
We built a new model to simulate tracks without using any third-party instruments. Every single track element is now calculated and animated separately.
Work on tracks continues. The next step is to make their behavior realistic, not only in motion, but also when they are knocked off, droop off the wheel, unreal, and so on. With the introduction of client physics, what players have long wanted will finally come true. World of Tanks will utilize multiple processor cores. Havoc will take full advantage of the computing power of multi-core processors. However, players will be able to turn this feature off on computers with low performance characteristics. But the game will remain the same for them because server-side physics will change as well. Our work making vehicles behave more realistically led to the development of a new model of tanks powertrain. This model simulates the work of the whole mechanism from clutch to wheel. Even mechanical losses are taken into account. Transmission gears change when a vehicle is on the move. Now, tanks behave like real combat vehicles to the last detail.
Of course, players will need some time to get used to the new behavior of the vehicles. Players won't experience any technical difficulties, though. Such actions as gear change or smooth depression of the clutch pedal will be controlled automatically by your in-game driver.
Improvement of the physical model of the powertrain yielded interesting results. Now, interaction between vehicles and terrain can be simulated more accurately.
The current physics model provides only one settable parameter: rolling resistance. It influences how fast a vehicle gathers speed and what its top speed is. Accurate simulation of the powertrain in the new physics system allows us to consider many more parameters of terrain. Besides the already existing rolling resistance, traction and terrain deformation parameters will also be considered.
This means that vehicles will behave differently depending on the type of terrain. This difference will show in acceleration time, slipping, and sidewise skidding. Changes in the way suspension springs work will also be included in the more realistic physics engine.
In the new model, the stiffness of the springs depends on the degree of compression. This means that springs are quite smooth when there's little compression, and this allows driving over small bumps without rocking. But when bouncing over larger bumps, springs will behave as stiff suspension.
Due to changes in server-side physics, tank turrets can now be blown off. The first challenge was that there was no separate turret in the homogeneous collision models of tanks. Then, as the turret became a separate model, we experimented with tearing it away just by applying some momentum. It could fly away by dozens of meters. It looked funny, but completely unnatural. So work continued.
There are many things to be considered for the turret to behave realistically when applying initial impulse. In the end, we ended up taking into account the internal volume of the tank. We also consider the volume of remaining ammunition and even the type of ammunition. When the turret comes off, destruction of its base is uneven and circumferential. It's damaged heavier at some points and less at others. Initial angular velocity, or in other words, how the turret will spin in the air, is determined by where the turret attachment is weaker.
After the turret comes off, it exists as a material body with its own mass. It can serve as cover. It can fall down and cause damage, or destroy a building or damage a vehicle. It can even destroy a vehicle, so beware of flying turrets. The changes we made in order to implement detachable turrets led to changes in another aspect of the game. Players will now be able to move various objects.
These can include trucks, trolley cars, wagons, or even an entire train. Some cars can be moved as well if they're big enough.
The behavior of trucks is worth mentioning. We're rather proud of this feature.
Trucks in the game have soft suspensions. Wheels are spring-loaded. The front axle can turn. So if you somehow move a truck and its front axle turns, and then you push it from behind, the truck will roll in a curve. Only if its front axle straightens out will it move straight.
Some buildings are still indestructible, but this may change one day.
We're also experimenting with server-side realistic destruction of large objects. We already have a technology that allows buildings to break into fragments.
And finally, there is another feature that will affect the behavior of tanks. Now they can flip over. We could have implemented this feature long ago, together with falling off the hills.
Unfortunately, the game wasn't ready for this then, for such an advanced technology. So I had to impose a maximum rotation of 60 degrees, so the tanks couldn't turn over. Now we're completely ready for turnovers, so all I have to do is remove this restriction.
This is all for now. We have told you about the most important upcoming changes to World of Tanks physics. Follow the news. We've got more surprises for you. Good luck on the battlefield.